Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Choose Wisely podcast. So, I'm sure, for the hundreds of thousands of you listening in right now, a lot of you guys are probably wondering who I am, what I do, and why I have started a podcast. So, I'm your host, Michael Subsky, and essentially, what I'm going to be doing for you guys is taking you on a journey of just learning. I would say 99% of everything that I've ever learned has come from listening to people talk on YouTube and also just talking to people in general. That's who I am. I've always been more of a talker and a listener rather than someone who will just sit down and read a book, right? And so because I feel that I have learned so much from doing that, I feel like there's probably a big population of people out there who like to learn the same way. And so who this podcast is geared towards is mainly going to be people around my age and younger. So that'd be mainly kids in high school, people, young adults about to be going into college, and people in college who are currently studying for a certain major. And so the why behind this podcast. So I just finished college. I finished back in May. I graduated from the Ohio State University. And a massive problem that I saw while I was in college, just to get this out there, I feel like social media makes college seem like it's like the biggest scam in the world. I'll probably talk about this in a little bit, but I don't think college is a scam. I think college can be super, super useful, but it all comes down to how you use it. And so what I had seen happen in college so many times is kids not being able to really, I'm saying kids like these are actually kids, adults, young adults, is seeing young adults struggle so much with determining what they want to do in their lives, right? College, I think it's crazy how this system expects people 16, 17, 18 years old to just decide what they want to do with their lives, to just, already have their career path in check and just know exactly what they want to do and then go off to college and in some cases spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for a major and a degree that they know nothing about. A major that is going to get them a job that they have no clue what the actual day-to-day of that job really looks like. So like I said, I think college is great. I learned a lot in college. I met a lot of great people, but I saw it time and time again where mainly two routes. The first route would be someone picks a major, they finish college with that major, and then they just decide that that major is not actually for them, and then the rest of their lives they never actually end up using it. That's one path. Or the second path is, which I think depends, but I think it's a better path, is they study the major for maybe like a year or two, they decide that that major isn't what they wanted to do after all, and then they end up switching their major. And so there's problems with both. With the first path, you're getting a major in something that you don't even want and you won't end up using. It's basically a complete waste of money. But then in the second path that I have often seen is kids waste another year or two, spending a ton more money than they actually had to. And so what I want this podcast to be is essentially I am going to be interviewing people who have interesting careers, common careers, just careers that I know a lot of adults will be funneling towards, through their college career and after, right? And so what I want it to be is a way for people to tune in and just learn about the paths that are out there. I like to think of it as, so I've already filmed a couple of these podcasts, and so episode number 2 is going to be with a good friend of mine who owns a real estate flipping company. And So I bet that there's a large group of people out there, maybe getting a major in real estate, getting a major in economics, whatever it could be, and they want to eventually get into real estate. So it'd be that episode for those people is going to be a great way for them to just kind of learn about, what the day-to-day of running a business like that truly looks like. And so, or it could be used as, say someone's going to be a doctor, they're studying for pre-med, right? And then they watch that episode and they say, wow, that career actually looks super interesting. I could definitely do that for a living. And then that could be the catalyst for them, doing a complete 180 on their lives. And so that's the whole goal of this podcast, is to essentially just provide clarity to people who need it in the time that they need it most, which would be when they're about to drop so much money and go into so much debt over in college. And so that is essentially the why behind the podcast. I have always thought that college, it's just a crazy system expecting people to just know exactly what they want to do. So, I already mentioned this, but the second episode is with a good friend of mine who owns the real estate company. The third episode is with another young entrepreneur who has started his own social media marketing agency. There's a lot out there on social media. You hear about so many people doing something like social media marketing, and oftentimes it's just people selling courses, and they're trying to sell you on something else that doesn't really have to do with social media marketing. So I think that podcast is going to be great for people who have been interested in social media marketing, but haven't really been given great information on what it's actually like what the day-to-day is and how it goes running your own social media marketing agency. This is going to be the first episode, real estate second episode. Third episode is the social media marketing agency. And then the fourth episode is going to be another good friend of mine who is an entrepreneur currently living in Chicago. He has started multiple companies and he does extremely well. And so, if those things interest you at all, even if it's not something that you are currently down the path of doing, listening to those podcasts, I think it provides tremendous value to just learning. I think while we're young, this is the time where we should just be soaking in all of the information that we can. And I think this podcast is a great way to do that. And so that's the podcast portion of what this channel is going to be. But I do have a feeling that this YouTube channel in general will just turn into, a young person giving even younger people advice kind of channel. I have gotten so much great advice from so many great people throughout my life, and I love talking. And so where I have come to is, I think this YouTube channel will be great for me because it's something that I love doing. It'll be great for you because maybe I can help you guys out in giving you guys advice that I've gotten throughout my life to get me to where I am at today. So, sometimes I think it's, there's not a whole lot of people out there who are young that give advice. I think it's different for a 20-year-old getting advice from someone who's 50 or 60 compared to a 20-year-old getting advice from someone who's 25 who was in their position a couple of years ago, I think it's much more relatable for people who are young to receive advice from people who are just slightly older than them because they just went through it. The people who are 50 and 60, their generations went through a completely different time period than what our generation is currently going through. So I feel like the competitive advantage that I might have over other advice channels is just going to be relatability. That's what I think the advantage I have is, because I'm currently going through this. I am not a master by any means. I still have my life to figure out, and I'm figuring it out as the days go on. But there are certain aspects of my life that I wouldn't say I necessarily have figured out, but I've definitely grown a lot in, and I feel like I can definitely help other people grow a lot in as well. For example, right? The older generations did not have to go through the world. They didn't have to navigate through the world of, social media and the internet, right? Growing up on it is so different than what they're going through right now, which is literally like learning it right now. Like they're just a lot of these older people, they're just starting to figure out what technology is, what social media is, what AI is. And I'm not saying that we have it figured out, but the difference is between us and them is that we've grown up on it, right? It's literally when the ages of 1 to 18 or whatever, 18 or 1 to 25, that's what carves you out the most as a person. And so we've been carved out completely differently than older generations solely because of just this technology age, right? I mean, I've said this to multiple friends. Like, could you ever imagine walking into a room with a group of people and no one's on their phones? And if you hang out with this group of people for 3 hours, no one pulls out their phones. I've always, maybe it's just me thinking that, but I've always thought that is just a wild experience, that you could walk into a room back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, even the 2000s, and no one would have a phone. No one would be on their phone scrolling through TikTok. I've always thought that was so weird. And I think if you kind of apply that to an entire generation, you can very easily see just how different we are compared to the older generation. And then you look at things, you look at things like AI, you look at things like ChatGPT. Even though this is a little bit more new, I didn't really grow up with ChatGPT or anything like that, but I could only imagine what the younger generations are going to be going through with ChatGPT. Going through school, having something next to you that can essentially do school for you. I have a feeling that a lot of these younger people are going to start using ChatGPT so much, they're going to start going, and they're going to be in school. They're going to be like, why am I even learning any of this? I can just ask ChatGPT this and it'll know the answer, and it'll show me how to do the answer, whether they want to learn it or not. But the main thing that they're going to be thinking is, I don't need to learn any of this. I can just ask ChatGPT. So this younger generation is going to be learning in a completely different way than what my generation did, which, we just had the internet. It kind of did the same thing, I guess. Like, we could ask the internet questions, but that's more of a search engine. You still got to go find the answer. So the way that we did it compared to the way that they did it is going to be two completely different things. And so basically what I'm getting at with all this is just that with technology and how different we are growing up, I think that brings in a need for people to get advice from people who understand them better. It goes back to the fact of, like, a lot of what our parents believe is, get good grades in school, go to a good college, get good grades in college, get a good job, work your way up the ladder, the corporate ladder, and then have enough money to retire, have a family, Those are all the advice that they would give us. But in this new age of technology where things are constantly evolving and constantly changing, you don't know what jobs are even going to be left. You don't know, is the world going to turn into a place where ChatGPT and AI gets rid of employees, and then there's not even any jobs left, and it's left to you to create something? Because that's personally, like, that's where I see the world going is, and that's where I see the world going is that as AI starts cutting down employees, people are going to be forced to have to start their own things and build their own companies and build their own personal brands. I truly believe that is where the world is going. It's going to take a long time to get there. I'm not saying that the idea of companies not having employees is going away anytime soon, but sometimes it's hard to see. Back in 2000, it was hard to see where the internet was going to go. It was hard to see that there were going to be that I was going to be able to pull out my phone and call an Uber to come and pick me up at any place at any time. Sometimes it's hard to see these things happening, but all you ever see with AI is able to cut costs, cut expenses, get rid of those monotonous jobs that companies don't need to hire out to people anymore. You see Tesla coming out with the idea of like self-driving cars, like electric self-driving cars. It's going to get rid of Uber drivers, it's going to get rid of Lyft drivers. I can only imagine how many jobs that's going to cut down. Truck drivers, trucks are going to become pretty automated. They're going to be able to drive on the roads by themselves. It's going to get rid of all those guys. I think those white collar jobs like accounting and lawyers and finance jobs. Do I think that those jobs are going away anytime soon? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. Do I think a portion of those jobs are going to be going away anytime soon? Probably. I think a portion of them will. Because, why hire some staff or whatever, or some lower level like associate to come in and just read documents, create slideshows, create, things of that nature? Why pay them to do it over a long period of time when you could just have an AI do it for you in literally 30 seconds? The AI is cheaper, it does it quicker, and sometimes it does it better. And with how AI is growing, it could be doing it a lot better very soon. We don't really know. And so, will AI create a lot of jobs? Yes, it definitely will. Do I think it's going to create more jobs than it's going to take away? I personally think that it will take away more jobs, but I don't know anything about AI, or not anything. I don't know enough about AI to make that decision. I think people really got to start looking at the long-term trends that these things are starting to create, and kind of look to see, what's going to stay, what's going to be created that I can get on early. These are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves as things like AI and technology start to grow at an exponential rate. Like, I think, for example, starting a personal brand, I think in this world of AI and technology, I think people are craving personality and personability. Is that even a word? I don't know if that's even a word. Personability. If it's not a word, then I just created it. But I think people are craving that sort of stuff. So I think, building a YouTube channel, building social medias, where it's more of like community-based things. People are starting to crave that more and more, and they're starting to move away. They don't want as much AI in their lives, That's why you see companies like Alex Hormozy's School, SKOOL. That company is like starting to do very, very well. It's basically a community building company. There's other ones out there. I'm just forgetting the names of them right now. You're starting to see YouTubers like Logan Paul and like KSI, who built Prime. You're starting to see these guys with massive personal brands really start to take business to the next level. I mean, I'm thinking they started Prime maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I really don't know. But look at where that company's gone. Have you ever seen especially in an industry like the beverage industry, which is so tough to tap into because, you sell beverages at, supermarkets and stuff that you got to keep them cold, in fridges. So there's not a whole lot of room. There's not a whole lot of real estate for them to house your products. And so that makes it a really, really tough business. And you're seeing Logan Paul and KSI just absolutely dominate. I mean, I see Prime, so like every single supermarket, convenience store, every single one that I go to, I always see Prime. That is so ridiculously difficult to do. And the only reason that they were able to do it is because they both have such large personal brands and communities that are able to support and want their product. So, that's where I see the world going right now. Maybe that's pretty obvious to a lot of people. I don't know. I think a lot of people would be very surprised at how little people really know and think about this kind of stuff. And because I see AI taking over, more like creative jobs, like video editing, for example. This is crazy. I'm going to talk about this for 2 minutes just because I think this is absolutely insane. Just to give you guys a glimpse at what AI can do, right? Let's say, all right, I make a podcast, right? And so how I do my podcast, you'll see it in the next couple episodes, is I have 2 camera angles, and then I have 1 large camera angle. And so there's 1 camera angle at one person, 1 camera angle at another camera angle showing both people, right? And so how I wanted to do the podcast is whenever someone speaks, the camera cuts to them. When the other person speaks, it cuts to them. And then every once in a while, it cuts to the large screen, right? To go through and edit a podcast like that, it would cost so much time and effort. So much time and effort. That is probably a 5 to 6 hour long process, at least. Like, that is a ridiculously long process. There is a podcast editor out there called Autopod AI. It is unbelievable. All you do is you put the clips into Adobe Premiere, you put the audio under them, right? All you have to do is just line up the clips, and then you use the Autopod extension, and it goes in there, and within 30 to 45 seconds, it edits the entire video for you. So based on who's talking, it cuts to that camera angle. Maybe I'll show something on the screen just to show you how it works, but it is crazy. It is crazy, crazy, crazy. It turns a 5 to 6 hour long process probably down to 1 to 1.5 hours, right? For a very, very cheap. I mean, it's maybe like $15 a month. It probably costs $20 to $30 to pay someone to edit the podcast for you. And maybe, yeah, I mean, when you pay someone to do that, you're saving yourself an hour and a half. But think about the time and money that I am saving myself by just using AI. And now apply that to everything. To everything. And this is just some use cases of AI that I'm seeing, right? There's AI voice and voice recognition softwares out there that are going to imagine you call up a restaurant, and that instead of the restaurant having someone sitting by the phone like a hostess, always ready to take calls and take reservations, and doing all that busy work, restaurants are going to start using these AIs to just handle the calls for them. Someone calls in, they speak to an AI, hey, I want a reservation at this time, at 7:30. The AI is like, okay, it tells you whether the reservation is there or not. It's able to have a full conversation with that person. And then after the call, it's able to book that reservation for you. That cuts out all the costs and all the time that it would take the hostess to do that for the restaurant. Allowing the hostess to focus more on the matters that are more people focused, like when people actually walk in to make a reservation, when people are walking in to get their tables, right? And so is that necessarily getting rid of a job? No, but it cuts a lot of costs and time. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this was just an episode me explaining my podcast, and now I'm talking about AI. But all of this goes back to the idea of just, older generations, they don't always understand what's actually going on and, what's new and what's upcoming. And so, having a good understanding of AI and technology, I think gives it's good to talk about this stuff because there are people out there worrying about, like, people our age. They see what AI is starting to do and they're starting to worry about it. They don't know what they should do because they don't know if their job that they might pick or the major that they might spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on will even be here in a couple of years. And so that's where this podcast could be great for those people. But anyways, I want to talk a little bit more about AI because I love talking about AI. And then I'll probably end the podcast. So, there's AIs like that. There's going to be marketing firms that start using AI to run marketing campaigns. It's literally going to be as simple as, give the AI a prompt explaining, the marketing campaign you want, what you're targeting, what you're aiming to get out of the marketing campaign. And there's going to be AI agents out there soon, eventually, that are able to complete that entire marketing campaign from start to finish within minutes, probably less. So it's that begs the question of, like, marketing firms, people who work for marketing companies, like, is their job still going to be alive in a couple of years? Like, I think it will. I'm not saying that it won't. Again, I'm not making any absolute judgments here. I got to make that absolutely clear. I am not saying that truck drivers are going away. I'm not saying Uber drivers are 100% going away. I'm not making any absolutes. I am giving my best guesses because in my head it just makes sense for these companies to hire it out to AIs instead of hiring people are emotional, people get tired, people don't always do the best work. In my eyes, this is just where the world is going. Again, not making any absolutes. But these are things that I think a lot of younger people are worrying about. And so I'm here to just kind of give my opinion on what I think these young people should do. I guess for this first podcast, since this is an advice YouTube channel, if I had to give advice to people who are going into college, here's what I would say. First off, if you just want to study something because you love it and you just want a job in it because you love it, then go get that major. Don't let me tell you any differently. Like, if you love something and you want to go learn about it, by all means, go and get that major, right? However, if you are the type of person where you're going to college and you're like, why am I even studying this? Like, I'm just studying this because my parents told me to, or I'm just studying this because everyone else has told me to, or everyone else is doing it. The advice that I would give to college kids would be, take a step back. Don't just dive into something because you've been told that you have to do it, right? If I were you, I would take a step back, really look inward on yourself. See, what are you good at? What do you like doing? What are you passionate about? Like, do you have any purpose? Do you, ask all of those big questions. Literally sit down and just write down what you think about, right? And then from that, you build a foundation of who you are and what you want. From that foundation, there are multiple paths, right? There are still multiple paths. Like I explained before, there's think about it like this. There's a shit ton of paths in the world. You can be anything from an accountant to a lawyer to a video editor to investment banking to all of these different paths, right? You could be a philosopher, you could be a doctor, you could be whatever. Infinite number of paths, right? Sit down, find out what you actually like, find out what you're actually passionate about, and what that'll do is it'll limit those paths from this down to this, right? And so that gives you a much better percentage chance of choosing a path that is actually right for you, right? So I'll explain to you guys kind of my thinking on this and what I've done to figure out what I want to do. So I love talking to people, right? I love communication with people. I love talking to people who are smarter than me, who I can learn from, and I just like having conversations with people in general. That's why, that's my foundation, right? And then another foundation is I love creating stuff. I was a magician for however many years, and I created a lot of magic. Not created, but I came up with I created a lot of magic tricks. I came up with a lot of routines. I love creating stuff. And so I love communication. I love talking to people, and I love creating stuff. So how many paths are there, right? The path that I just so happen to land on right now is just creating a YouTube channel and just creating content. And by the way, I'm not saying that this YouTube channel is like what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I could very well do this YouTube channel, realize that it's not exactly what I thought it was, and I can always move away and go find something else to do. But I'm giving it a try because, based on what I told you, like this path as of right now, like it makes sense. Like looking down the path, I'm like, this path could make sense for me. Like very well, it could very well make sense for me. And so it'd be a lot more stupid if like I didn't know what my foundation was and I just like chose being a lawyer, or I chose being like a doctor or like a scientist or whatever, right? The odds of those paths working for me compared to this path that I'm on right now, I mean, it's night and day, right? At least I'm giving myself the best chance possible to really find out my passion and my purpose and what I want to be doing in this life. So that's kind of that's the advice that I would give to people. Like really sit down, find out what you like, and then from that lay out what paths are available, and then just start going down those paths, seeing what you like, right? It sounds super, super simple, but so many people allow other people and let other norms direct them where they don't even want to go. So that's one piece of advice that I would give. Another piece of advice that I would give to younger people who are going into college, all that stuff. This is pretty simple, but start working out every single day. Like figure out what your goals are in working out and then start doing that as soon as humanly possible. You will never be in a healthier, better shape than you are right now. And 100%, it's a lot easier to stay in shape when you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and on and on. It's a lot easier to stay in better shape than if you started when you were 20 years old and you built a good foundation from that. I can't prove this. I mean, I'm 99% sure that this is true, but I bet that if you took the population of people who are like 70 years old and you split them up into people who are in shape versus out of shape, I guarantee you a greater proportion of the people who are in shape were working out consistently when they were 20 years old, and a greater proportion of the people who are out of shape probably didn't start work, or like probably never worked out, or if they did, they started way too late. It's obvious, when you're older, it's harder to build muscle. It's harder to lose weight. Your metabolism doesn't work at the rate that it once did, right? When you're older, it just gets harder to do things, right? That's why, like, something I've always been hearing from like older people is when I go out and I drink or whatever, I'm usually recovered by like the next day, like within a couple hours, like by like the afternoon. Like usually I'm fine and I'm ready to go. And they'll always tell me like, enjoy it while it lasts, because when you drink when you're older, you're going to be hungover for 2 to 3 days. That just goes to show you, like, as you get older, it gets harder to do things. It gets harder to do things that you were once able to do. And plus, when you get older, you get injured a lot easier, And so when you're injured, you can't work out as much. So, having that foundation that you built not only allows you to get injured less, but, say you do get injured when you're older, you have a little bit more leeway. Like if you get injured and you're 300-400 pounds and then you really can't walk or you really can't do anything, you're in bad shape. But say you're 180 pounds, you got some good muscle, you're in good shape, and then you get injured, you can go a month without working out, and will it hurt you a little bit? Yes, but you'll be all right. You're not going to be in as bad of shape as the first one. So that'd be my second piece of advice. Oh, and also really sit down and try and figure out what your goals are with working out. So at first for me, it was just to build muscle and gain weight. So all I did was just eat a lot. I ate a lot. I weighed 130 pounds and I was 5'8", 5'9". I'm around 6 foot now and I've gained 55 pounds. I'm not as motivated now to gain a bunch of weight. I really don't have any desire to like get up to 200, 210 and just be like beefy and muscly. But I'm at a good spot, right? Like I like where I'm at right now in my fitness journey. And so those were my goals, just to build muscle, but now, and to build weight. But now that I've done that, now my new goals are more, I have, for some odd reason, I have lower back problems. I don't know. I've screwed up, I guess. Some lower back problem, nothing crazy, but just not as good as I want it to be. So now my fitness goals are more focused on strengthening certain muscle groups that I know can help me with that. So for example, my hips, I think I have very weak hips for some reason. Strengthening my lower back, glutes, hammies, working out those things a little bit more because they're more connected to the lower back. And then also abs, just because having a strong core helps with, having stronger back. So like really sit down, figure out what you want. Like if your goal is to lose weight, you should probably prioritize more cardio. I'm not saying you shouldn't lift weights still. I think everyone should lift weights, but if your goal is just to lose weight, you should do more cardio. Focus on that more. If your goal is to build muscle, do what I did. Eat a lot and lift weights and just try and build muscle. If your goal is to deal with like a certain body part, like me, with the lower back issues, try and focus your workouts more around that. If you are playing a sport and there's a certain muscle group within that sport that is utilized more than others, start working around that muscle group. Third piece of advice. So, first one was finding your purpose. Second one was going, and working out every single day. Third one, maybe this is just me being biased. You have to learn how to talk to people. Communication in today's age is the easiest way to separate yourself from everyone else. All right, I'm going to backtrack to something that I said earlier in a second. But in this generation of people always being on their phones, right? You have an entire generation of people who are just scared to have conversations. And I used to be like that when people were having a conversation and I was too scared to jump in or voice my opinion on it. I would just go on my phone. It's very comfortable to just go on your phone. But that didn't help me learn how to talk to people. All it did was just give me like an immediate way out. So when there's an entire generation being raised on iPhones and iPads and technology, and not talking to people, that means that everyone usually are extremely weak communicators. So if you are able to just learn how to have a conversation with people, you are going to separate yourself from this generation so much. It'd be like, I remember seeing this on a podcast, someone talking about like working out. Like imagine no one worked out, like no one went to the gym or anything. How many times would you need to go to the gym before you become exponentially better than everyone? Like it probably wouldn't take that much time and effort to do that, right? So in an entire generation where, think about it, where a majority of people struggle talking and having good communication skills, how much time and effort do you need to put into learning how to talk and communicate? How much time and effort do you really need to put in to become exponentially better than everyone? Like, it really probably wouldn't take that much effort. So that you should really look at that as like that. This is awesome. Like I can learn a great skill not quickly, like it still takes time, but I can learn an incredibly valuable and great skill that will separate me from everyone else in ways that I can't even see right now. I can't even tell you how many kids I know, how many friends I have that are so freaking smart. Like so smart. I'm talking maxed out GPAs at some of the best schools that you could ever imagine, right? But then when you talk to them, they are just shy. They are just unable to have a good conversation. They're unable to ask questions. They're not curious about anything. They just know that they're super, super smart. And so can those people, like, are those people screwed? No, they're actually going to do very, very well. But if those people were able to add the aspect of communication, oh my God, they'd be unstoppable, right? You're really only as good as your own. You can only utilize your intelligence so much, right? But if you are able to communicate that, like, a person can be as smart as they want, right? But if they can't communicate it, then they're extremely limited. Like, let's say someone is at 100% intelligence and another person is at 75% intelligence, right? This is not like true math. Like, this is not a true math statement. Like, this is very hard to like calculate. Honestly, there is no calculating for this. But let's just say there's someone at 100% intelligence and there's someone at 70% intelligence. The person at 100% intelligence is at 20% communication skills, but the person at 70% intelligence is at 100% communication skills, right? Like, the person who is at 70% intelligent or 70% intelligence but 100% communication skills is going to outdo that person with 100% intelligence 9 times out of 10, in my opinion. If you are unable to articulate what it is that you know, how are you supposed to help other people? You know, business is all about like working with a team and making things happen together. If you're unable to communicate what you know to those people, it doesn't matter how smart you are, you're not going to be able to work very well and efficiently and effectively. Compared to the guy who's 70% and 100%, you know, he might not be as smart, but, you know, he can still learn. Well, he might not be as smart, but he can communicate better. And he might be able to work better with teams. And that, in turn, gives him a competitive advantage over the other guy. And so that, you know, I want to give actionable advice. Like, I don't want to just say become better at talking. That seems pretty stupid. So some actionable advice I would give to becoming a better communicator. And I'm still learning how to communicate. I'm sure I'm going to watch this podcast over and I'm going to realize that I said like, and kind of 100 times. 1000%. For those of you who don't know, those are like filler words right there. You know how I said, you know, those are like filler words. I could have just said those are filler words, but of course I'm terrible at doing that. So it's something I'm really trying to work on. So actionable advice that I would give. 1, this is how I learned a lot of stuff. Check out the YouTube channel Charisma on Command and watch every single video that guy has ever posted. It's unbelievable. You learn so much about communication skills, humor, storytelling, learning how to get people to like you, all that stuff. That, in terms of, I would call that, he calls it, you know, like a charisma channel. I would just call that like a human connection channel. That's what I would say. Learning how to connect with humans better and better. So 1, go watch all of those videos. I'm telling you, I can't recommend that channel enough. That channel has helped me tremendously. So 1, go do that. And he'll give you actionable tips too, beyond what I'm about to give you. So 1, go do that. 2, I would go and try and have focused learning conversations. And so what I mean by that is either 1, just go talk to like go up to a friend and say, hey, let's have a conversation right now and try and work on something together. So let's have a conversation right now and try not to say any filler words while we're talking. You know, it doesn't have to be the best conversation ever, but let's just, for 30 minutes, let's talk and let's try not to say any filler words. Focused conversations. Really try and dive into learning not to do something or learning to do something. Let's have a conversation where we both tell stories. And then after we're done telling stories, let's tell each other what we did wrong or how we could improve or what we think we could have done better to improve. So yeah, charisma on command is the first step. Second step, have focused conversations. You can even have focused conversations with yourself. I'll out myself on this one. Sometimes I talk to myself when I'm driving in a car. Kind of weird, but I literally will just have conversations with myself while I'm in a car. And I'll just talk out loud to myself. See, I just said there. Try not to do that anymore. But I would say having conversations with yourself, honestly, that's a great another actionable step that I've done that I think has helped me a lot. Also, so you got that. And then I will say become a better storyteller. I think being able to tell a good story is very important. I enjoy talking to people who are able to tell a good story. Whether it's a story about something that's happened to them or, something that they heard from someone else. I think being able to tell a compelling story to people is super important in all types of ways, and just having conversations with anyone and, really being able to captivate people. Honestly, if you want another actionable step, you don't necessarily have to start a podcast, but take a video of yourself talking about anything and rewatch it, and you will realize how terrible you sound and how many mistakes you make while talking. So yeah, those are some actionable steps that I would take to becoming a better communicator. My final piece of advice is understand how you get better at things. And this is going to sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but you'd be surprised at how many people really don't know this. I would say, and this is just my personal opinion, that very rarely are people just born with a natural talent for things. Obviously you look at someone like LeBron. That guy was born with natural talent to play basketball. I think to get to that level, you do need to be born with some natural talent. But if you just want to get not even good, if you want to get great at something, not like excellent or perfection like LeBron is, but if you want to get great at something, I would adopt the mindset of volume is king. So I think about it in terms, here, let me give you a good example with golf, right? I would bet money that if I have two golfers, like two people who play golf, one's an athlete, one's not an athlete. One is, super smart, just like good at, just super smart. I don't know. And then the other one's super dumb, all these things. I wouldn't care about any of that. What I would ask them is, how many golf balls do you think you've hit in your life? How many golf balls do you think you've hit in your life? Say the super athletic, super smart guy has hit 500 golf balls in his entire life, and the other guy has hit 10,000. I would put my entire bank account that the guy who has hit 10,000 golf balls is probably the stronger golfer. Is that the case 100% of the time? No. But what that tells you is that it's repetitions in everything, right? The guy who spends more hours learning about investment banking is going to know more than the guy who spends 5 hours learning about investment banking. The guy who takes 100 classes on golf or 100 classes on boxing or 100 basketball training sessions, that guy is going to be better usually than the guy who's done 5. So understand that it literally doesn't matter where you start, and that all that matters is just doing something repetitively over and over and over for as long of a time as you can. You should never care how good you are in the moment. Just focus on the things that you can control, and what you can control is how many repetitions and how much you're practicing. Look at all the things in my life that I do or that I'm interested in. There's whatever, basketball, golf, working out, magic, communication, all those things, tennis. I don't know if I said golf, but golf. You know, I would say poker, magic, and golf. Those are probably my top 3 things that I'm best at. Like those are probably the top 3 skills that I have, that I've honed in on, that I'm the best at. Compared to, basketball, tennis, and I'm getting better at communication, but I just started working on it recently. Like I really just started focusing in on it, maybe like a year or 2 ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, but not as long as the others, right? Those things I've easily done the most volume in, 100%. Like I've hit the most golf ball. Like I've hit a shit ton of golf balls. I've practiced magic for hours and hours and hours. I've played and practiced poker for hours and hours and hours and hours. Compared to the other things where, I still have practiced those for hours, but just not nearly as much to be as good as these. So when you understand that it's a volume game, that's something that's like, you can calculate that. Like there's literally like a system that you can use. There is a system there that you can use that guarantees results. And so instead of just looking at things like, like I could never become a magician. Like magicians are just naturally talented. I can tell you firsthand, anyone can learn how to do magic. It literally just takes a shit ton of practice. For the most part, it's all about volume. And when you know that, when you understand that, you'll understand that you can literally do anything that you want. It rarely ever comes down to just natural ability. Very rarely. I would say natural ability is what takes you from being in like the 95th percentile to the 99th. That's where natural ability might come into play. But for most of us, we don't really care to get into the 99th percentile. For most of us, we just want to get really, really good at it. We want to get to that 85th, 90th percentile. This was a great podcast. I'm actually, I'm almost out of battery on my podcast recorder, so I'm going to end it right here. Guys, I hope I gave you some good information on what this podcast is going to be about. And then, for the most part in the rest of these podcast episodes, I will not be the one giving you advice. I will be asking the guests on the podcast to give you advice. So I kind of wanted to make this podcast a mix of, helping you understand what this channel and what this podcast is going to be about. And then also I wanted to make it a little bit of, I want to give you guys some advice. I want to help you guys out. And I figured first episode should be the time that I do that. But if you found this video interesting, if you learned anything about it, if you learned anything new, drop a subscribe on me, turn on the post notifications. I hear all the YouTubers saying that, so I thought I would too. And so this is episode number 1. Episode number 2 will be coming out with Luke Schimpf, the real estate flipper. Episode number 3 will be with Jesse Pleasant, who owns his own social media marketing agency. And then I've got a lot of exciting episodes coming in after that. But I will drop all 3 episodes at the same time. So if you found this video interesting, go and click on the other 2 videos on my channel if you want to learn about real estate or social media marketing. This is the first ever episode of the Choose Wisely podcast. Thank you for tuning in.